As I'm sure most of you are aware by now, a second closed alpha for Battlefield 5 launched today. It is only a PC offering again, so sadly, console players, you will have to wait until the open beta to get your hands on Battlefield 5, but again, that's really not very far away now. And if you didn't get into the last alpha on PC and you want to give this one a go, I've got a few codes that will activate the alpha for you. I've put them in a comment down in the comment section, so the first lucky few viewers can get themselves involved in the alpha today. Now, this second alpha on the surface looks the same as the first one, and that's because nothing has really changed there. It's things underneath that will change how this build almost entirely plays differently from the first one, and I've got to say, the changes were noticeable within the first few minutes of playing, although that might have been a false positive, and by the time I'd played 3 or 4 hours of the alpha, I could definitely feel the difference. DICE has tweaked some of the weapon damage statistics for this test, and they've not touched anything else. So weapons like the STG, the BF5, and the Kar98, they all saw changes, and I'm going to run through those for you now, and then I'll get into my opinions after that. I will, however, drop a couple of quotes here from Daniel Berlin and David Serland. These are developers over at DICE. They're stating that this alpha, this second alpha, is an A/B test, purely focusing on weapon balancing. Having a totally different balance to their first alpha means that they can compare data and feedback from players, and then they can get to a good place for the launch of Battlefield 5, whether that's closer to Alpha 1 or Alpha 2. As for not including any other changes in this alpha, Daniel Berlin stated that that is the best way the team can evaluate if the changes have actually made a difference with nothing else being added. If you add other things, you can't be sure if it's the weapon balance or something else that's showing up differences in the data. Okay, let's jump into some of these weapon changes then. First of all, we're going to start with the assault class weapons, the STG and the Irma. Now, the STG has had its maximum damage reduced from 27 to just 20, and that increases it from a 4 to 5 bullet kill. The minimum damage, that's been lowered slightly from 17 to 16.7. The maximum damage range has been increased from 11 meters to 20 meters, so it's now a longer distance where you're going to be landing those maximum 20 damage shots. The damage fall-off range, and that's the distance at which the bullet reaches its lowest damage value, that's been increased from 50 to 60 meters, and 1 additional magazine of ammunition has been applied to your soldier on spawn. Overall, this means the STG becomes more focused towards medium range and loses some of its close range effectiveness. Now, the EMP, or the Irma, I call it the Irma, that's the SMG style weapon, that has seen some changes as well. Maximum damage range has been decreased from 12 to 8 meters, that's fairly close. The damage fall-off range has been shortened from 50 to 40 meters. The minimum damage has been increased to 14.3, and again, like the STG, another magazine's worth of ammunition has been applied to your soldier on spawn. These changes push the Irma further into the close range category and limits its potential at medium range, where in Alpha 1 you could sometimes catch an enemy off guard, or at least I could with some of my aiming anyway. Might have been more by luck than judgment, but it did sometimes happen. Next up, we've got the medic class with the BF5 and the MP40. Starting with the BF5, we're not seeing many values changed here, but the values that are changing I think will have a big effect on gunfights. First, the maximum damage range, that's being reduced from 26.5 to 15 meters. That drastically reduces the range that you can hit players with maximum damage. The damage drop-off range, that's being increased from 50 to 60 meters. That's going to increase the range that you will deal a varying amount of damage from the maximum to the minimum value. And finally, the minimum damage of the gun, that's been reduced from 17 to 16.7. The MP40, that's seen a few tweaks. The maximum damage range is down to 8 meters from 12. The fall-off range, that's been decreased from 50 to 40 meters. And the minimum damage has been increased to 14.3. Also, another stick magazine is being added to your ammo pool when you spawn in, and essentially here is being balanced like the Irma, being pushed further into the SMG category by decreasing its ranged effectiveness but buffing its close range power. Moving on from the medic class over to the support class now, we of course have some heavier weapons over here. We have the Bren light machine gun and the MG34. Now the Bren has had its maximum damage range increased from 11 to 20 meters, the damage fall-off range increased from 50 to 60 meters, and the minimum damage decreased from 17 to 16.7. This enables the Bren to deal its maximum damage amount out a little bit further, and it slots in alongside the Gewehr 43. I think it's quite likely that the LMGs and the self-loading rifles in this game, as they were in Battlefield 1, will be balanced to work best at the same engagement ranges, and that's going to be medium to long range. The MG34, with its unique bipod-only aim-down sight system, that's seen overall a fairly big buff, and it's one of the few weapons in this list that I can really say has been buffed as opposed to just being changed. The minimum damage is up to 20 from 17. That makes it a 5-bullet kill maximum. The max damage range, that's been increased from 11 to 20 meters, and the damage fall-off range, that's been increased from 50 to 60 meters. This means the MG34 can reach further with greater damage potential now, and that's great news for players who like to use the thing bipoded over cover. Sometimes you need to finish off that kill, and in the first alpha, you die before dealing all the damage needed to kill somebody because someone would just ding you in the head because you're standing still. Now you've got a little bit more damage at range, hopefully you can finish off some of those kills, and in practice, I have found that that seems to be working. Lastly, for the primary weapons, we have the Scout class, only one weapon here, the Kar98. Now, DICE has decided to tweak this rifle to make it more of what I think is a skill-based weapon. Bullet velocity has been reduced to 600 meters a second from the previous value of 700, but maximum damage has been increased from 80 to 90 out to 8 meters. Now, that 8 meter mark is another value that's changed. The previous max damage range was 20, so that's been decreased overall. The damage fall-off distance is now set to 60 meters. Previously, it was 80 meters, and the minimum damage overall is now just 55 instead of 60. By reducing the bullet velocity, DICE has increased the amount of bullet drop that you can expect to experience with the Kar98, thus creating a scenario where more skilled players will be able to land shots at longer ranges. And lastly, the Walther P38 pistol, that's the pistol that everyone is using in the alpha, that's changed as well. Max damage range now sits at 15 meters, max damage is now 25, not 30 like it used to be, minimum damage is up to 16.7, and the damage fall-off distance is now 30 meters. Now this, in my testing, drastically weakened the pistol and really pushed it back into the secondary role that I think DICE wants it to be a part of, instead of being the weapon that you just switch to when you run out of ammo and it being really, really powerful. I think DICE wants you to think about getting ammo for your primary rather than always relying on your secondary weapon. With all of these changes then, what do I actually think of the gunplay this time around in Battlefield 5? Well, on paper, I must say I was a little bit worried. DICE got generally good feedback from the first alpha on their gunplay and the balance, apart from a few spots like the STG in single fire mode, but generally, I liked the gunplay and the time to kill in the first alpha. So to then see all of this come out for Alpha 2, I was really not expecting to like things. What I got was a mixed bag of results, but surprisingly, it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. When this second alpha first opened in the morning, there was quite a bit of server lag occurring, resulting in some rubber banding and in general just poor performance. This made the weapons feel quite spongy in their damage output, and I stopped playing about an hour and a half or so after the launch of the alpha to make this video, but after airing my opinion on Twitter, quite a few people didn't understand how I'd come to that conclusion, and of course remembering that I had some server lag and really not thinking that might affect things, I jumped back into the game and played another couple of rounds, and then everything felt different, and that was because DICE had fixed the server issues. There was no more lag or rubber banding, so here's my final opinion. The STG is still a concern for me. It doesn't feel anywhere near as powerful as it did in Alpha 1, but it really has lost a lot of its close range effectiveness, and I think that was maybe why I liked it so much, and I think why a lot of other people liked it so much as well. With DICE here in Alpha 2 sticking it firmly down as a mid-range weapon, I was beaten quite a few times by players running around with the Irma SMG, which now rocks at close range. Inside 20 meters or so, the Irma is the weapon that you should be choosing. Tap firing it at mid-range as well will sometimes get you a kill. That's something I really did a lot during the first alpha, but that playstyle doesn't pay off as much as it did anymore here in this second alpha. That, I think, is where the STG is supposed to sit, as well as the MP40 as well. Now, with the MP40 being a medic class weapon, it feels, to me at least, a little bit out of place when you compare it to the Gewehr 43, but having both of those weapons available to the medic class allows someone to choose from two completely different playstyles if they want to. The Gewehr gives you ranged power, and the MP40 focuses the action back to close to medium range, where this weapon now excels. I had a lot of fun using the MP40, even employing some hipfire at extreme close range to bring down some players. Into the support class, the Bren LMG now feels more powerful than it did before, especially at mid-range, where it slightly benefited from having its max damage range increased, and as I said earlier, the power of the MG34 now at long range can be very, very helpful in landing a kill before somebody takes you out for standing still for too long. As for the Kar 98, I like that the bullet drop has been increased for it. I'm a sucker for pulling off some of those arcing shots, but the minimum damage decrease and reduction in damage drop-off range has in some cases now pulled the weapon into a 3 bullet to kill category when you factor in some health regen between hits, and that for me is just ridiculous for a sniper rifle. I get that the point is to aim for the head in this game, I'm all down for that, but a solid body shot at any range should be doing a little bit more than 55 damage in my opinion. I'd expect it to be up somewhere in the 60s range. For me, I prefer the weapon balance as a package that we saw in Alpha 1, but I do think that these systems are a little bit closer together in practice than they look on paper. Now, I'd prefer it if DICE could find a happy medium between these two, because each of these balancing options has their merits and drawbacks, and I have no doubt that is exactly what they're going to do before the launch of Battlefield 5. The really interesting thing is, the Gamescom build of this game, or just the latest build of Battlefield 5 that DICE has at the studio at the moment, also has completely different weapon balancing to the first alpha and the second alpha, so DICE really is trying to collect as much data as they can at the moment. But there you are, that's an overview of Alpha 2, that's what I think of the changes that have come to Battlefield 5 in this build. Let me know what you think down below in the comments section, I'll be interested to hear your opinions. If you played the first Alpha and are now playing the second, what do you think of the differences between the two? I do have some more stuff to show you tomorrow, so look out for another video, and I'll be kicking my channel back into life over the next week as we move closer to Gamescom, where we know Battlefield 5 is going to be. We still don't know what's happening at Gamescom, but we definitely know the game's going to be there. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, click that little bell next to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my future videos. And thank you very much for watching today. But until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.